There is a kind of silence entirely different from sulking or stonewalling. It is neither a sign of indifference nor a tactic to exert pressure. Rather, it is the silence born of a decisive choice, a moment of awakening after having endured too much. The super empath, the one who always strives to see the good and to heal, finally realizes that they cannot keep pouring their precious energy into a hopeless relationship where they are no longer treated with the respect they deserve. When they choose to go completely no contact with the narcissist, it is not merely about deleting messages or blocking accounts. It is a profound inner transformation, an unspoken declaration. I withdraw from this game. I choose to prioritize my own peace. For the narcissist, this is the greatest shock. They believe that you, the one who loves and forgives, will forever be their emotional supply. But what they never anticipate is for you to vanish into absolute silence, no tears, no explanations, no hint of turning back. Have you ever wondered, what turns the most generous heart into a resolute warrior? The answer is not cowardice. It is the most authentic act of self-preservation, safeguarding one's dignity and one's right to heal. If you want to know what happens next in the narcissist's psychology when they are left in that void, and how you can transform your pain into power, hit subscribe now and watch through to the end of the video to discover the secrets to reclaiming your inner freedom. Let us explore it together. Before analyzing the act of walking away in silence, we must understand the one who performs it. A person with the gift of the super empath is not weak, gullible, or naive, as they are often labeled in toxic relationships. On the contrary, they are individuals endowed with an extraordinary emotional acuity. They do not merely understand others' feelings. They sense them sometimes through a fleeting glance, a subtle shift in tone, or even the tense energy in the air. They possess the ability to read unspoken pain and needs that most people overlook. It is precisely this phenomenal empathy and open-heartedness that makes them a beacon of light, an irresistible source of attraction, especially for those dwelling in darkness, such as the narcissist. A narcissist's attraction to the super empath is never genuine love. It is an instinctive pull driven by the need to exploit a stable emotional supply. The super empath is a goldmine because they love wholeheartedly and forgive endlessly. They do so not out of low self-worth, but because they always see the good, the potential for change, the seed of kindness even in the most chaotic souls. They cling to a profound belief in salvation, in the power of love and patience to heal every wound, every distortion of the human spirit. To the narcissist, this is the perfect supply. The super empath reacts deeply and authentically to every emotion, does not let go easily, and persistently seeks the root cause, striving to understand the why behind the other's hurtful behavior. They endure wound after wound, driven by the fierce hope that love will be the healing balm. Ironically, this very belief in salvation becomes their fatal weakness. The narcissist recognizes and ruthlessly exploits this compassion, entrapping the super empath more thoroughly than anyone else in their manipulative web. The super empath is trapped not because they fail to see the problem, but because they believe that true love must have the power to redeem, and that belief imprisons them. However, there is one truth the narcissist never anticipates. The super empath also has their breaking point. Their calm exterior and boundless patience do not mean they are unbreakable. They suffer in silence, accept one injury after another, until a spark of wisdom ignites within them. In that moment, they no longer view the narcissist's toxic behaviors as wounds in need of love's healing. Instead, they recognize them for what they are: a bottomless black hole born of deliberate manipulation, constant deceit, and persistent shirking of responsibility. The instant they realize they have been turned into a living tool merely to fuel and sustain another's distorted ego, everything changes within the super empath. Their faith collapses utterly. Empathy, once their moral compass, is replaced by an unflinching clarity of reality. And the very love and persistence that once imprisoned them now become the fierce fire that propels their liberation. When the super empath truly awakens, they cease entirely to play therapist for the narcissist. They turn inward, asking themselves the core questions. Why did I allow this to go on so long? Why did I believe I could save someone who clearly does not want to be saved? When the stark answers emerge, they need nothing from the outside anymore. No more endless arguments, no further explanations, and absolutely no one else to hold accountable. They simply walk away. This departure unfolds in absolute silence. No door is left ajar, and no slender thread of hope is released for the other to cling to. This is not cruelty or coldness. It is a decision fortified by self-respect and the harshest understanding. If you want peace, you must create it yourself. When this happens, the narcissist loses more than an easy source of fuel. They lose the only person in the world who ever truly saw and loved the fragile humanity behind their deceptive mask. For someone who thrives on control, the most lethal blow is witnessing the person they manipulated most successfully finally claim power, silence, and freedom, things the narcissist will never touch or recover. The process of awakening and accepting the truth is never a sudden light bulb moment. For the super empath, seeing the true nature of a toxic relationship is a painful soul journey, yet it is the only gateway to genuine freedom. At first, they are engulfed by self-doubt. They endlessly question themselves. Am I too sensitive? Could I be causing the problem? I must be more patient. Surely they are deeply wounded. These defensive thoughts are a natural reflex, because the super empath's nature is to seek the good in others and cling to the belief that love can transform and heal everything. Then, the shift begins in the quietest, most mundane way. Perhaps an all-too-familiar apology rings hollow like a worn-out script. A declaration of love suddenly sounds insincere, or a small truth slips out that this time they cannot fool themselves into ignoring. In that moment, their focus fundamentally shifts. The super empath stops worrying about the narcissist's pain and behavior and starts confronting their own suffering and loss. Their questions evolve from "what can I do to help them?" into probing ones aimed squarely at themselves. Why am I always the one sacrificing and bearing the burden? Why is my kindness exploited and seen as weakness? Why must I suffer to uphold a relationship that benefits only one side? When they face these questions with unvarnished truth and no more excuses, the true awakening begins. They no longer rationalize for the one who harmed them or strive to be the hero who understands and rescues. Instead, the super empath realizes a simple truth. They deserve a far healthier, more respectful relationship. From that point on, blind empathy is replaced by razor-sharp clarity. Kindness remains, but it is now firmly guarded by inviolable boundaries. Love endures, but no longer at the cost of self-destruction. And most importantly, they relinquish the belief that they are on a mission to save others. They understand, you cannot heal someone who chooses to hurt others to sustain themselves. This phase comes hand in hand with emotional chaos, pain, regret, even anger at themselves for staying too long. Yet simultaneously, it is when they reconnect with their greatest source of strength, self-respect. When self-respect returns, they no longer need apologies, answers, or an external happy ending to find peace. They understand that the only realistic path to reclaiming their life is to walk away in silence and never look back. They stop playing out every scenario, stop reacting, and stop trying to explain. And in this total silence, the narcissist must finally face the bitter truth. The power balance has been irrevocably reversed. The awakening of the super empath is not merely a liberation from a terrible relationship. It marks the birth of an entirely new person, stronger, wiser, and immune to the emotional games that once imprisoned them. To the narcissist, every relationship is merely a control contract, where love is built not on genuine connection but on a sense of absolute power. When the super empath awakens and enacts the silent severance strategy, a truly seismic psychological shock occurs in the narcissist's world. The first thing the narcissist experiences is utter disorientation and confusion. The super empath does not leave as other victims do. They do not weep, threaten revenge, or beg for change. They vanish silently, leaving behind no emotional anchor for the narcissist to cling to and pull back. It is this absolute stillness that the narcissist cannot endure. It thrusts them into a state of silent panic, a toxic internal chaos. They will immediately begin their probes, checking social media, sending innocuous short messages such as, "I hope you're okay," or "This song reminded me of you." Their aim is not genuine concern, but to test whether you still react, still fall within their sphere of control. When complete silence meets them in return, the narcissist descends into real psychological turmoil. They may start rewriting the story in their head and with those around them, claiming you abandoned them for no reason, alleging that you have psychological issues, insisting that you have changed. They attempt to construct a false narrative of a person who is happy and well in order to cover the terrible void the super empath has left behind. The super empath is not just any partner. They are the narcissist's most crucial mirror. They are the only one who ever saw the true, vulnerable human behind the narcissist's arrogant mask. When the super empath departs without a word of response, without a final message, without any conventional closure, the narcissist is forced to face their deepest fear, the absence of the one person who validated their existence. Even worse, the super empath does not merely remain silent. They grow, heal, and find genuine peace. Your silent but steady presence from afar renders the narcissist powerless, for they realize that all their old control tools have lost their effectiveness. That silence is a real psychological verdict. I have seen everything clearly, and I choose freedom for myself. No words can shatter a narcissist faster than the steadfast silence of someone who has seen through them, because it proves that you have nothing left to hope for, nothing left to prove, and nothing left to lose, and that is a power they can never reclaim. The harsh reality is that no one walks away from a relationship with a narcissist without carrying deep psychological wounds, and the super empath is no exception. However, the crucial difference lies here. They do not allow those wounds to define who they are. Instead, they use them as catalysts for transformation. The healing process after total severance is a long and arduous journey, often beginning with a vast inner emptiness. The super empath loses not only the person they once loved, they lose a substantial part of themselves, the part they poured into loving, repairing, and holding on to something they once believed was real. Ultimately, the truth emerges. What they clung to all along was not genuine love, but a cunning illusion constructed through manipulation and perpetual deceit. The initial phase of severance is often shrouded in profound silence, not only silence toward the narcissist, but also a silence toward their own clamoring thoughts. The super empath needs space and time to process the entire experience. They begin to piece together every silent moment of suffering, every act of forgiveness that was overlooked, every controlling behavior disguised as concern. When the full picture of truth is finally assembled, the guilt over leaving dissolves. Instead, a quiet sense of pride begins to kindle, for they have found the courage to end that torment for themselves. This is when the true transformation begins. The super empath returns to the inner home of their own being. They start learning how to set firm, unshakable boundaries, not to punish others, but to protect their own peace and life energy. They learn to say no decisively without guilt, and to love others without losing themselves in the effort to please or appease them. Most importantly, they shift the source from which they seek worth. They no longer look for love from the outside to feel worthy, because now they affirm their own intrinsic value. They need no one else to validate their existence or worth. This inner freedom, this abundance from within, is something the narcissist who always lives by external reflection can never understand or attain. It is thanks to this freedom that the super empath can truly be reborn, stronger and wiser after stepping out of the darkness. One of the most powerful signs that the super empath has fully transformed is the letting go of the need to expose the narcissist. They no longer feel compelled to go public, to recount painful details, or to prove to the world that I am the victim and I was right. They have reached a deeper level of awareness, True peace does not come from others finally believing you, but from no longer needing that validation. When this peace arrives, accusations and attempts to prove oneself become meaningless because the truth already lies firmly within. This is also the moment when the super empath begins to open their heart to an entirely new and healthier definition of love. This new love does not demand that you sacrifice your core identity. It does not require silent endurance. And, most importantly, it does not force you to constantly demonstrate your worth through actions or self-abasement. It is love based on respect and equality. Even if they are not yet ready to receive love from others, they have begun practicing the healthiest love of all, self-love. This love is built on deep respect, compassion for their past mistakes, and boundless gratitude for the courage that carried them out of the darkness. The one who was once the easiest target, the one who was manipulated most successfully, has now become a version of themselves that is stronger, wiser, and no longer puppet-controlled by anyone. This transformation is not a sign that they have become cold, hardened, or lost their capacity for empathy. Rather, they have learned the most important lesson of life. Kindness and generosity should never be wasted where they are unseen and unappreciated. That is the final boundary they establish. And this may be the greatest freedom of all. Not only freedom from the narcissist's control, but freedom from their old self, the version that once accepted pain and suffering simply to call it love or loyalty. They have reclaimed the definition of happiness from others' hands and placed it firmly in their own. When the super empath was trapped in the relationship, the narcissist held the reins of power completely. They decided when to draw close and flatter, and when to withdraw suddenly as punishment. They used closeness and distance as tools to keep the other person insecure, always striving to prove their worth. All the power lay in the manipulator's hand, but everything changes the moment the super empath begins to withdraw emotionally. And when they step out of the narcissist's life in absolute silence, no formal goodbye, no necessary explanation, the balance of power is reversed completely and forever. What truly shatters the narcissist is not your physical absence. What they cannot endure is your absolute emotional absence. You are no longer within their sphere of influence. You no longer react to their provocations, seek their approval, or remain trapped in that cycle of manipulation. This immediately renders the narcissist feeling invisible, erased. For the first time in the game they created, the one who once provided an endless supply of emotion now becomes a mirror, reflecting their harshest truth. They have lost all power, lost all influence, and are no longer the center of that emotional universe. What makes this situation unbearably devastating for the narcissist is this: the super empath is the most vulnerable, the most forgiving person whom they are certain could never free themselves. Yet you are the only one to leave without leaving any opening. No vague promises such as, "Let's talk again when things calm down," or "I will be here if you change." Nothing at all. In that hollow void, the narcissist is forced to confront what they have avoided and denied their entire life, themselves, unembellished. For someone whose existence depends entirely on external reflection and admiration, losing the gaze of the super empath is like being unplugged, erased from their world. They do not know who they are without someone to manipulate. They cannot perform when there is no audience. The narcissist has lost the starring role in a play that nobody wants to perform in anymore. When the super empath cuts off all contact and simply focuses on living their own life, growing, healing, and steadfastly moving forward without mention, without retaliation, and without sending any message to the narcissist, they convey one message that the manipulator cannot comprehend or accept. I do not need to defeat you or prove victory over you. I only need to let you go completely. That act of letting go strikes at the very root of the false power the narcissist believed was theirs. During this phase, many narcissists descend into extreme emotional chaos. Their panic manifests in various ways. Some become more toxic, attempting to tarnish your reputation and spread nasty rumors as a last effort to feel they still exert influence. Others play the remorseful role, appearing with a feigned promise of change, hoping to see if your kind heart might soften once more. But whatever their reaction, the root of all such behavior is the same: the ultimate fear of losing control. And the astonishing fact in this scenario is that the super empath need not do anything to win. They do not need to publicly expose the narcissist. They do not need to win any more arguments. Simply continuing to walk away quietly and resolutely, without looking back, is enough to force the narcissist to face one undeniable truth. You have seen through their true nature, and you still chose to leave. This reversal of power does not come from vengeance or from a desire to see the narcissist suffer. It comes from your own inner maturity, from no longer needing validation, from no longer requiring apologies to feel peace, and from no longer expecting a neat ending to accept reality. Now, you possess enough wisdom and strength to know that you do not need to hear another word. That self-possessed calm, that steadfast silence, that letting go without a trace of resentment, those are the weapons that render the narcissist truly powerless and useless. They once believed you were the easiest person to control, but in the end, you become the only person they can never manipulate again. And that is the most painful truth they must accept. When the super empath decides on a silent severance, that act goes far beyond simply blocking phone numbers or cutting off contact. It is a spiritual and emotional turning point, a clear and resolute refusal to step back into chaos ever again. It is a silent declaration, but one that echoes, "I have been hurt enough. From this moment forward, I choose myself." In reality, many around you may not understand. They may judge you as cold or unkind, accuse you of disappearing irresponsibly, or claim you are overreacting. But only you witnessed everything that happened in that relationship. Only you know how many times you tried to heal, how many times you forgave, and how much of your identity and life energy you sacrificed to hold on to what ultimately was a counterfeit love. Your silence is not a sign of emotional depletion. On the contrary, because your feelings are so deep and genuine, you must erect a wall to protect them. Cutting off all contact is not a punishment tactic or a form of manipulative revenge. It is the noblest act of self-rescue. It is the firm step out of a cycle you know will never bring you true peace. You do not need closure from the one who hurts you, because you have already closed that door within your own soul. You do not need an apology, because you have already forgiven yourself for staying too long and trusting too much. The only thing you need is peace, and you have had the courage to choose it. True liberation does not lie in witnessing the narcissist's collapse, regret, or pleas to return. It lies in the fact that you need none of those things to feel whole and worthy. It comes from reclaiming yourself, a stronger, more awakened being who loves your true self more deeply than ever before. You did not leave the darkness to seek revenge. You left to step into the light of truth and healing. And if that inner light makes others uncomfortable or uneasy, it does not mean you owe it to them to dim it, because now you understand that light exists not to please or impress anyone. It exists to guide you. Finally, the super empath's silence is not an ending, but an ellipsis for a new chapter. It is the ultimate affirmation that you have seen everything clearly, that you have done your utmost, and that now you choose the right to live in peace. The act of cutting off all contact proves that you are no longer the victim of manipulation, but the architect of your own serenity. Remember that you are not weak for loving deeply, nor foolish for believing in change. You are simply the one who found the courage to stop when you realized the sacrifice was meaningless. True liberation does not lie in the narcissist's remorse, but in the fact that you no longer need it to feel deserving. You have given yourself the greatest gift of all, inner freedom. Continue walking in the light of self-respect, because you have done what was right. You have not merely left one person. You have returned to the true home of your own soul.